Jams, jams, jams. Picture books and jams. Welcome, everybody, to PBJamz. Music and picture books, what a perfect sandwich. Squish them all together, what a yummy snack. PBJamz, yummy books and music. PBJamz, reading, writing, teaching. PBJamz, what a yummy treat. Jamming PBs all the time. PBJamz.
Good morning or afternoon, whenever it is that you are joining us. We are so incredibly glad that you are here with us today. I am here with Carmen Oliver, the author of Building an Orchestra of Hope, which you see behind me, which is an absolutely incredible, amazing, heartwarming, and inspiring story of how music impacted some lives of young people and circuitously a lot of other people as well. So welcome, Carmen. I'm excited to get to chat with you today.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this. We started corresponding back in August, and we had put the date out for a while because things were so busy for both of us, but I'm just so honored to be here. So thank you for having me.
Oh, so excited. Love highlighting. I love highlighting all the picture books that have music connections, but I gotta say ones like this that are just they just kind of take it up a notch because they are just super inspiring and just really give us something to latch onto that talk about the power of music, not just the fun side of music, but really the power of music. So talk to us a little bit about that inspiration and how you came to write this book and what that process was like.
So I was really lucky. I had a former critique partner that knew how much I was attracted to stories about making a difference in the world. It's kind of my one of the, I'm themes of family, themes of making a difference in the world. Those are two, and friendship are kind of the themes that I often will gravitate towards. And people that are, just like ordinary folks who go to extraordinary measures, to make the world a better place. And so she had shared with me a little video trailer clip. They were in the process of creating a movie. And so they were trying to generate funding for an awareness about the landfill harmonic movie that they were trying to create. And it was a little clip about Fabio Chavez, this orchestra director who he and his friend Cola had built instruments out of the landfill, out of the trash, and created all of these instruments. And he was teaching children how to play these instruments, how to read music, how to hold the bow at the right angle, like kids that had never touched an instrument before, didn't know how to read music, and then learn how to play on an instrument of refurbished materials. How do you tune those, right? When it's very easy when they're, for them to get dented and things like, so it was just so inspiring to me. So as soon as I saw that clip, I just needed to know more. 60 Minutes, I was really lucky. 60 Minutes also had a segment on it. And so I was able to watch that. And I was also able to get my hands on early versions of clips of the movie as it was being made. And then, of course, there was a ton of great research and articles out there. And I just, so I wanted to know more about Fabio too, kind of the brains behind, the operation. And then, what he was doing for these children who really, were living on the landfill and around in kind of shanty style homes. And so, he had his own instruments, but, and the kids wanted to learn how to play on them. But it was kind of like, well, what do you do if you bring in instruments, brand new instruments, and raise money to get new instruments, and the instruments are worth more than your home? You're creating another problem for children and families who are in an impoverished area. You're basically inviting thieves to come in and rob them, right? So it was just, there was so many layers to this story. And kids that really had no hope for tomorrow. They weren't considering college. Their parents worked in and around the landfill day in and day out, 8 to 12 hours, where they would go through the landfill looking for things that they could sell to make money, pennies for cardboard and plastic. And so a lot of times the children would be, when they weren't in school, they would be there at the landfill, the really young ones. And then the ones that got out of school, well, where do they go? Well, their parents are at the landfill. So they, so Fabio really wanted to do what he could to give them, to let them see beyond the landfill, right? To see where could music take you in life, right? And what could it do, for the community at large too. Obviously, he didn't think maybe as big a picture at the time, but by teaching these kids how to play instruments and create a completely youth-run orchestra out of recycled instruments. I mean, it's just, I love the innovation of that too. I love that, and I'm a big one about, recycling, repurposing. I can't stand throwing anything out. I'm one of those ones, like I would have, hold on to a washer and dryer for 25 years. I still have a freezer that's over 25, 30 years old that was passed down from, my mother-in-law. So yeah, those kinds of things, because are mean a lot to me. I don't want to, Earth is a very, fragile place, and we need to take care of it. And so, that was another thing that drew me to this story, is that innovation and that recycling and repurposing. And then, the world is sending us garbage, and then they're sending back this incredible music.
That was my favorite quote. I love that quote in the book. Love it.
It just brings goosebumps. I just get goosebumps all over me. And now to see these kids playing, there's a clip that I will send you that we can share with your audience too, that Fabio created for us. And it's so incredible to see these next generation now of students that are in the Recycled Orchestra of Cultura, practicing every day, practice, and he's so not only are the original kids that he was teaching have gone on, to college and dreams and following their passions now in music, but all of the kids that are coming up now underneath them. I mean, there was originally, maybe 30 to 40 kids. I mean, I think the orchestra is over 200 kids, so it's just incredible to see how one person's vision, and his dedication, and humanity can touch so many people, and I wanted to share that story with kids. I mean, these are the kind of stories that I was looking for when I was 12. I was that little girl who went door to door singing at Christmas time, Christmas carols, to try and generate money for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. So my brother and my best friend and I would go ringing door to door, and, I'd collect about $60 and send it in. And I would have been so inspired to hear a story like this about, this man and these kids making a difference, so yeah, so that's kind of the inspiration. Writing it, the research process, I spent only about, at the beginning, I spent like a solid week researching as much as I could get my hands on. But then I wanted to get something on paper. I always tell kids too, it's really hard. And this is really smart to think of too, for any writer, for our writers out there that are also pre-published and aspiring writers, at some point you've got to be careful that you don't get too far into the research that you don't get anything down on paper. And so after about a week, I wanted to get a rough draft down. I knew enough that, so that, and I wanted to figure out, what were going to be the obstacles along the way as I was building the story, right? And how could I create some tension in the middle of the story? And how was Fabio going to overcome some of those things? And so I also wanted to learn a little bit about he himself, and him growing up and stuff. But after about a week, I wanted to get that first draft down. And so I did. And then, after I polished it quite a few times, I was actually at Texas Library Association at one of their big conferences, and the publishers will come and they will set up booths there, and they'll have their new books. So can they talk to librarians, let them know what their new books that are coming out for the season. And I was talking to Kathleen Mers, who at the time was a friend of mine, Don Tate. He's an author illustrator. It was his editor. And I believe at the time their book, The Amazing Age of John Roy Lynch, was coming out. And so she and I were just talking about that book. And she happened to ask me if I wrote as well. And I said I did. And so she said, well, what are you working on? And I told her about this story. At the time, I think I just had it, as the Fabio Chavez story, just as a placeholder, and she says, oh, I really, that sounds really, really interesting. I'm intrigued. I would love to see that. Would you send me that manuscript? And we
Okay.
actually ended up selling it. Yeah. From that personal, place. So you just never know. I always tell aspiring writers to always be on their game, because you just never know when something like that, that magic might happen. And then, we learned about another book that was coming out. Once I sold it to Erdsman's Books for Young Readers, we learned about Ada's Violin that was coming out. And so we wanted to make sure that that book had time to shine on its own. And we also needed to find an illustrator for our project, which took a lot longer. A lot of people don't realize too how long it can sometimes take to find the right illustrator for your project. And so, and the illustrations by Louisa Uribe are just so beautiful. I really feel it makes it such a kid-friendly, accessible book too, kid-centric. Palette and colors that she chose are amazing. And so, so we sold it probably in 2015, and it's just now coming out in 2022. Wow. So it's kind of, sometimes a book takes as long as it takes.
Yeah.
And then the back matter in the book is very extensive.
It is.
And so I probably spent a lot of 2019 and 20 going back through my research. Fabio and I were corresponding back and forth quite a bit. And because I wanted to tell the story after the children get to play the instruments for their parents for the first time. What happened after, the movie was made, and where are they today? And where is Catura, Paraguay? Like all of the things that kids might wonder, because it's a completely different part of the world. So, yeah, so it was a process.
Yes, it sounds like that's a long time. And we talk about that a lot in publishing, that it's, that timeline can be very lengthy. And we really have to build our patience muscles, don't we? For those kinds of, that's tough. And it's also tough. We were talking a little bit before we got official about the other book, and how that, how that works, and how you have to kind of do some juggling and make sure that your story is as fresh as it can be, but also how there's room for lots of different voices telling different stories. And, a few weeks ago we had Mr. Rogers' Gift of Music, and there's tons of Mr. Rogers books out there, but she told that one from a fresh perspective, specifically with the musical angle. And so I love the hope-filled angle that you bring to this one. And also, the focus on recycling. And I just think that's such a powerful message for our time period as well.
Yes. And I think building community, I think what I love about this story, building hope and building community, all that transcends and comes out of music. Music can really build bridges, can't it?
It really can.
And I really love that. And there's just so much that, that this orchestra has been able to do for not only the children, but for the families as well, and for the larger community that is, around Catura and Asuncion, and so, building, partnering with other service organizations to do good work and create communities and clinics, and bringing artwork into the community to brighten up spaces. And it's just it's amazing. It's like a ripple effect. And it's so good for kids to know that, and hopefully it'll give them hope that, if these children, in an area that, doesn't have as much, is in more of an impoverished social economic area, if they can pull themselves out and create, beautiful music, and and have dreams for the future, can't we all?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked a good bit already about the music because it's just so inherent
Yeah.
in the book. But can you talk to us a little bit about what you know about how the instruments were created or any of the specific musical content that you can share with us? That was just fascinating.
There has been so many instruments that were created. One of the first instruments that was created was the violin. And Fabio brought one of the rancheros that worked in the gancheros, sorry, that worked in the landfill, Cola. He just an innovative carpenter. And so he was able to construct a violin by combing through the trash and pulling all kinds of assorted materials. And he worked with Fabio to kind of build an outline, construct a violin. That was their first instrument that they were, creating. And some of the different, like he made over time, as the children many of them started to learn on that violin. I mean, he was able to make a drum out of X-ray films as drum heads. A viola was made from a paint can, flutes and saxophones from drain pipes, a cello from an oil barrel, which, and I've seen them too, like when this cello was built. I mean, so you have to be careful with these instruments because if you dent that barrel, then the sound changes too, right? So not only did the children have the challenges of learning how to play on their instruments, they had the challenges of learning how to take care of them, right? And kind of massage them sometimes when things happened. There was like a trumpet with like some worthless coins that were serving as the valve caps. And so it was just amazing that everything that could be made out of these just spare parts that are found in a landfill, and how innovative that Cola and Fabio were together.
Yeah.
To work together to make the instruments and consult on it back and forth. There's a lot of that just couldn't put into the book, right?
Oh, yeah.
But kids will see, like there's pictures of the flutes and the saxophones, that I can even hold up here. They can see and so they get to see the different instruments that were created, and then, I love how they're all like outside in the in a vacated schoolyard, trying to learn how to play. And there's Fabio, working alongside of them. And so it was challenging, because these kids, a lot of them they didn't know how to read music. They never played an instrument before. So it took a lot of, perseverance and practice from these kids, and, one of the things is it was so, for so many of them, like a lot of the violinists and stuff would say too, like it was the thing that they looked forward to. Like they couldn't wait till they could go to practice on their, their violins and learn new notes and then see how all the notes, put together made the song and the music it created when they all played together too, right? Each instrument had its own sound and it just created a more just transcendent tone by, as opposed to just playing on, them on their own. But when they got all of the instruments together, it was just like, wow.
It's, in ensemble music, that's one thing that you learn relatively early on, is that you can make more beautiful music together than you can by yourself.
Right.
But I think when you add this level of ingenuity and just the circumstances of all of it, then it elevates it even more from where they came from. I was doing some research earlier today before I talked with Carmen, and one of the video clips I watched was one of the little girls who I think she also played violin, if I remember right, but she was just talking about music is everything to me and I cannot imagine my life without it. But then you think that's only possible because of Fabio. And if he had not been there, then that huge chunk of their life would be missing and they wouldn't have had these amazing experiences. The different recycled orchestras have traveled like all over the world, which you talk about in the back matter. Yeah. Amazing opportunities and like Carmen was saying earlier, like the ripple effect of what they've been able to accomplish that she details in the back matter and how they've been able to to pay that forward is just phenomenal.
And, so many of the kids too had never, I mean, they'd never left
Right.
Ventura, Paraguay, right? So none of them had papers,
Mhm.
didn't have luggage, right? Because they didn't, you didn't go anywhere. So like there were all these other little things too that a lot of people didn't realize. Like Fabio worked tirelessly to make sure, he got papers for everybody so they could travel outside of, and leave Paraguay. They were invited to Rio de Janeiro, and so they needed to go to Brazil, but and they'd never been on an airplane before. They'd never seen the ocean before.
Right.
They needed luggage. So he worked with them to get them luggage, worked with them to get so there was a lot of that stuff too. So he's creating also these new experiences for kids, like I love, there's one part in the movie, in the Landfill Harmonic movie too, where kids like see the ocean for the very first time.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's just so many layers to this book, but they've been, Canada, Spain, Brazil, United States. So some of the instruments are housed in a museum. I believe it is in Arizona, I believe. And so but yeah, they've got to tour with some rock concerts, and just extraordinary experiences that
Yeah.
are going to shape them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, you have to wonder how many of these kids are going to go on to do music as a career, or who at least this is going to, like you said, color and shape who they are, but in a musical way, right? Like, how are they going to use that music as they move into adulthood, and how are they going to, I mean, that ripple effect even has yet to be seen. I mean, as so it's just amazing to think what those kids who've been blessed in this way, like what they're going to go on to do individually,
Right.
to impact the world.
I'm sure one of them will be an orchestra director at some point. You can't work with a man like that so closely for that long, have them change your life. I could see at least one of them will be inspired to want to do that, not only play their own music, but inspire others to learn and start another youth-run orchestra, and maybe from recycled materials somewhere, in a different part of the country,
Absolutely. Yeah. So many opportunities and possibilities. What do you think, Carmen, was the very hardest thing about writing this book?
Well, there's definitely a bit of like Fabio speaks Spanish and I speak English. My
Okay.
Spanish is very weak. So there was a lot of translation back and forth. And there was, the back matter was extensive. The back matter actually took me longer to write than the actual text of the picture book did. And probably even more research than the original picture book text. So that was challenging. The other thing that was challenging is because we had such a large amount of time from when I first started with the book to when it was publishing, I had to go back and really relearn it, reteach myself everything too, and fresh, get myself back up to speed, because we had to start and stop the project at so many different times. So that's definitely a challenge, because you're like, is this, I am a firm believer that everything happens for a reason.
Right.
And, and I do believe that a book will come out in the time when it's meant to come out, as well. Like I kind of feel the universe plays a role in that. And so I try, you try not to worry about that. But, at some point you think, well, it's been, after 5 or 6 years, you're starting to think, is the book going to come out or not?
Right.
So
Yeah.
that can be a little bit challenging too. But
Sure.
I just really always had faith that it was going to happen. And I just tried to control what I could control. I could get into the research. I could work with Fabio back and forth. I could make sure that, the information that I was providing was as factually correct as I could. I was, getting it right from, first person. So, I wanted to make sure, and it was really important for me to make sure that he had an opportunity to read the manuscript, to comment on it if he needed to make sure it was accurate, because he's the protagonist of the story.
Right.
And so I'm really fortunate. I'm really super excited. All of the challenges along the way, just they all pay off in the end, and it's, life is always up and down. It's just, you just have to kind of learn to ebb and flow with it.
That's right.
And don't get, and try not to get frustrated. You know, it's just something that you can't control. And I'm so excited. I'm going to get to meet him this fall in New York. He is going to be coming over from Paraguay, and we're going to do some events together. And I'm just so excited. I know we'll probably be writing on our phones a lot and transcribing back and forth, but
Right.
what an amazing experience to actually, meet one of the heroes that you write about.
Absolutely. Yeah, what a blessing. I was just reading something or listening to something recently that was talking about, writing biographies and how um the difference in writing about somebody who's already passed and somebody who's still living. But what a blessing to actually be able to
Yeah.
meet and talk and have his first person account be influencing the writing. It's just wonderful. And you reminded me of another question that I had not intended to ask, but do we have any word about whether this book will be translated into Spanish? Is it going to be available?
I have not heard yet. My hope is that it would be.
Yeah.
That's, I try and I've been very fortunate that I've had a lot of my books translated and are global. That's important to me. One of the other publishers I work with is for North South Books, and they have a presence in the United States, but then the book has been translated. The Twilight Library that they published, that I wrote, with the pictures are illustrated by Miran Azian Laura, who's over in Spain. So just being able to work with, global creators is really important to me. It's been translated into German. A Voice for the Spirit Bear is in Arabic. And I know I've got another book that is Spanish right now. Bears Make the Best Reading Buddies. So it is my hope,
Yeah.
because of this book specifically and where it's
Right.
set, that it will get translated and picked up by foreign rights, maybe at Bologna, you never know. But yeah, that would be my dream.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my fingers are crossed and I'm saying my prayers for that as well. That would be fabulous. So we've talked a little bit about kind of the central message. So can you kind of narrow down and nail down for us, what if there was only one thing that somebody was going to take away from this book, what would you hope that that would be?
I think we all play a role um in making the world a better place. And I think, I mean, if no one does nothing, nothing happens, nothing changes. But if we all stand up and do something positive, the ripple effects are just, huge. And this book really has that, really, to me, showcases a lot of that, and how, when one person stands up to do something and acts, and Fabio teaches a couple of children how to play instruments, then before word gets out, it's spread through the village, everybody's wanting to learn how to play music. And now you've got to create more instruments, and you've got work for Cola, so now you're providing a better life for that gentleman, and he's working tirelessly. And you're getting invited to communities to move them with the power of music. Again, that it's all about using your voice and making a difference in whatever way, shape, or form you can.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the things, and that even in an area, even where things don't, maybe not seem that things are going so well, that you can control how you feel. You can
Right.
have hope in your life, right? And
Right.
you can, do what you can to make the world a better place. I just hope people, even more so in the world, that if we just all had that kind of an attitude, what a beautiful place we could create.
Yeah, that's a great point. And yeah, I think that's very evident in the book for sure. Talk to us about what's coming next. So, obviously you're a prolific author. Do you have other new things coming down the pipeline that we can look forward to, or what are you working on next?
The stuff I'm working on now, I can't really talk about. We have an editor that is interested in another nonfiction project about another ordinary, extraordinary young person who is a hero,
Love
in
it.
a with Olympic dreams, an Olympian. So I'm really, really hoping that that all comes together. I've done some revision work on it. So we're kind of just waiting, bated
Gotcha.
breath. Yeah.
Yes.
And then I have several other projects that were out there right now that we're waiting for, hopefully yeses. I tell kids all the time, you can't let the no's define you, because all it takes is one yes.
That's right.
So yeah, so that's where we're at with those. So those projects, hopefully I'll be able to announce something in the next year or so. Things, come so slowly, and sometimes, and then things can come so fast. It's just crazy
It
how
seems like it's one or the other, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is so awesome. Guys, if you I'm telling you, you don't want to miss this book. It's so fabulous. And I'm going to link up not only the video that Carmen was talking about, which is, I can't wait to see that with specific interaction with Fabio, but also there's so many other video clips out there. There's the amazing movie, which I haven't seen yet, but it is on my list to watch, which is the Land Philharmonic. Love that play on words. I mean, just there's so much amazing stuff. I'm going to link up a bunch of stuff for you down below. The Pinterest board, the YouTube channel, which is going to be replete with all kinds of things. To me, this is like a really a fabulous way for specifically second grade teachers, because that's part of your curriculum, and also music teachers in general. This would be an amazing segue into kids creating their own instruments from recycled materials, right?
And we do have an educator discussion guide coming. It's in the works. I've seen it. It's going to be fabulous. And there are going to be different instruments that you can create with instructions in that. And that's going to be free off my website. So, purchase the book, get the bibliography at the back too, with all of that, all those additional
Lots of stuff. Yes.
resources, and then download, we should have that up in the next couple of weeks. And that's, it just supports the book in so many ways. And then it has, everything is aligned to all the different curriculums for, Common Core. So it's gonna do double duty.
Love it. Love it. So I'm going to link up, of course, Carmen's website and all those things that we've been talking about. There is so much that you could do with this book. Like she said, there's so many layers. So for all my teacher friends out there, get you a copy, because you're going to want it, because it's just so beautiful. And I mean, I've alternated between goosebumps and tears. Everything I've read and watched since knowing about this book, and reading it and watching the video, little packages here and there. So it's just a beautiful and inspiring story, an amazing, beautiful book that you've created about that amazing story. So thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. What a joy. And any teachers or librarians can always reach out to me too through my website. I'm always happy to answer your questions. And I can't wait to share the educator guide for you too, so you can do even more fun stuff with your students in the classroom.
Amazing stuff. So guys, check out everything below. This episode will be up for 2 weeks. So this week will be mostly the author stuff, and then next week I'll link up all the teacher stuff that I can find. I'm gonna link up Carmen's website, so you can look up that additional teacher guide, and you're just gonna have a blast with this book. So much inspiration. So thank you so much for joining us today for PBJamz, and we hope we'll see you next time. Have a great week.
Jamming PBs all the time. PBJamz. Songish books and bookish songs. Tips for music teachers. Interviews and book reviews. A little singing and dancing. PBJamz. Yummy books and music. PBJamz. Reading, writing, teaching. PBJamz. What a yummy treat. Jamming PBs all the time. PBJamz. Jams, jams, jams. Picture books and jams. We'll see you next time for PB.